Hi everybody, and here's Jackson and I, and we're going to read chapter 9 from the Dear Old Briar Patch. Okay, first hello to Jackson, who's right here, and Matthew and Marjorie and Emma in Maine. Hi to Malia and Lucas in Missouri, to Kai Ming and Ru Kai in Washington State, and Hope here in Maine, and Dylan and Lucas in Maine, the Maine Lucas, and our friends Leslie and Mary way over in England, and hi to Ezzy and Indy in Oklahoma, to Kayla in Maine, to Sylvia, Macy and Lillian here in Maine, Harper and Judson in Maine, Caden and Xander in Maine, and Evangeline and Isaac in Rhode Island. Hi to Mabel in the country of China, to Oliver, Madeline and Wyatt way out west, and to Alex here in Maine, up near the Penobscot River, past the Keg. Okay, chapter 9. Mrs. Bob sits tight. He seldom violates a trust who tells no more than what he must, from old Mother Nature. And let's see, that looked like somebody near the old briar patch. Reddy Fox to somebody maybe? Ah, yes, okay. It should not be difficult for me to find Mrs. Bob's nest. I'll just watch her. She will not leave these eggs for long for fear they may get chilled. So I'll just watch to see where she goes, said Peter Rabbit to himself. What are you thinking about, Peter? Asked Bob White from the fence post on which he was sitting. In his eyes there was a twinkle of mischief. To himself he was saying, that long-eared bunch of curiosity is thinking about that nest of ours and planning to try to find it. I know, Peter. Yes, sir, I know, Peter. Peter looked up at him. Nothing very special, he replied. I've never seen Mrs. Bob looking better than she does now. How many eggs has she laid this year? Bob White's eyes twinkled more than ever. I don't know, said he, though I regularly take my turn sitting on them. I haven't counted them. I haven't asked her how many there are. I can tell you this, though, that if all those eggs hatch, we'll have one of the biggest families we have had in years. I do like a big family. That means more responsibility and more worry, but just the same, I do like a big family. As Bob taught, Peter had been looking up at him. Now Peter turned to ask Mrs. Bob how many eggs she had. She had disappeared. Yes, sir, she had disappeared. I don't see Mrs. Bob, said he. Neither do I, replied Bob, with something very like laughter in his eyes. Where do you think she has gone? Asked Peter. I think, replied Bob, she has gone back to our nest. Peter's face fell. He had been so sure he would be able to follow Mrs. Bob, he was quite upset by finding that she had slipped away, and he had no idea which way she had gone. At once he began moving about this way and that, looking for that nest. Have you lost something? Inquired Bob White. Hi, Jax. No, replied Peter. I thought I might find some extra nice clover around here. There's a splendid patch the other side of this fence. I can see it from here, said Bob. Peter didn't know what to say. He had a feeling that Bob White was trying to get him away from the neighborhood of the nest. But there really was nothing for him to do but go sample that clover. So he did. He found it very sweet and tasty. Now, if there's anything that can overcome Peter's curiosity, it is his appetite. Presently, he had quite forgotten Mrs. Bob and her nest. Morning after morning, Peter hopefully visited with Bob White. Now and then Mrs. Bob appeared. Then she would disappear. Peter never did see which way she went. That nest was as much a secret as ever. He had a feeling he was missing something, and he was. You see, this year, the Bob Whites had an extra fine nest. Mrs. Bob had taken special pride in making it. She had told Bob they would have the best nest they ever had had, and she had spoken truly. Of course it was on the ground, as always. It was hidden in a tuft of grass with many other similar tufts of grass around it. The nest was well hollowed out, lined with grass, and made very comfortable. The grasses growing around it were brought together above it to make a sort of grass roof. You might have passed so close to that nest as to almost step on it, yet not have seen it. And Mrs. Bob had added something extra, something she makes only occasionally. She had made a short passageway, covered in the same manner, leading to the nest. Slipping through that passageway onto those precious eggs, she disappeared from sight, almost as if the earth had swallowed her. The color of her coat was such, when she was settled down and perfectly still, she looked like part of her surroundings. You might have looked right down at her and not suspected you were looking at a bird. The thing to do was sit tight, Mrs. Bob would say to herself. If Bob and I do that when either of us is on the nest, I'm sure no one will find us. Oh, yeah, don't distract him too much with that though, Jax, okay? Okay, Jax. Sometimes it takes the greatest courage and willpower to sit tight. There was the morning Farmer Brown's boy happened that way. Mrs. Bob heard him coming. First his whistle, then, when he was very near, the swish of grass against his legs. She knew she could slip away through the grass unseen, but there were those precious eggs, she couldn't leave them. So she sat tight, not a feather moved. It seemed to her that he must hear her hat going pit-a-pat with fright. Of course he didn't, and passed within a foot without seeing her. Peter Rabbit was not the only one interested in finding that nest. Reddy Fox and Mrs. Reddy knew the Bob Whites must have a nest. As they hunted mice, they always looked sharply on all sides, hoping to find it. I bet they did, knowing Reddy Fox. One morning, Reddy sat down while he looked over the green meadows. He was so near that his big bushy tail partly crushed the roof of that short covered passageway to lead into the nest. On her precious eggs, Mrs. Bob sat tight. Oh my word. Now, there's a picture, guys. And I see Bob White up on top of the fence post. And Reddy Fox, that must be Reddy, right down below. And he's very near where the nest is. Oh boy. I wonder what'll happen. Let's see. On the precious eggs, Mrs. Bob sat tight. She knew all about the quickness of Reddy's eyes, the keenness of his ears and nose. If I should move the least bit, wink an eye, he might see it. If I should rustle a straw, his wonderful ears would hear it. And if I should move, it might give off some scent, and his wonderful nose would catch it. So I must keep as still as a stone, thought she, and she did. It seemed to her that Reddy sat there for a long, long time. He didn't. It was only a few minutes that he sat there. But there are times when a few minutes seems like hours. This was one of them to Mrs. Bob. It seemed to her that she simply must spring into the air and fly to safety. Jackson, did you see the picture? Reddy Fox and Mr. Bob White up on the fence post? I already showed it to them, but we can look again. Yeah. Reddy Fox. Finally, Reddy yawned, got to his feet, and trotted off toward the old pasture, of all places, huh? Not until he was well on his way did Mrs. Bob move. Then, with a little sigh of relief, she shook out her feathers and changed her position. It was the next morning that Peter Rabbit said to Bob White, while asking after Mrs. Bob, "Sitting all day long, right in one place day after day, it must be dreadfully tiresome. I don't see how Mrs. Bob stands it. I should think she would need a little excitement. At that very moment, Mrs. Bob was again sitting still as if frozen. Just a little away from her sat Mr. Blacksnake. Now, Mr. Blacksnake is very fond of young birds and of eggs. He was so big he could have swallowed Mrs. Bob. There he was, close to a nest full of eggs, but didn't know it. It was a long time before he began to move away. Then he was provokingly slow. Once he turned straight toward that nest, but changed his mind and finally glided away. Bless you. Mrs. Bob drew a long breath. Don't you think Peter would have had excitement enough had he been in her place? And then there was the time Black Pussy appeared. He likes to think that he is a great hunter. It's well for the little people of the Green Meadows and the old orchard that he isn't as good a hunter as he thinks he is. Mrs. Bob heard him creeping through the grass, and again she sat tight. Mrs. Pussy's a cat, Jax.
Yeah.
Holding her feathers close to her, so there should be no scent. Black Pussy, sniffing and stopping every step or two to look and listen, passed so close that he almost brushed against the soft tuft of grass in which the nest was hidden. Don't you think that must have been an exciting moment? But Black Pussy went on no wiser than Farmer Brown's boy and Reddy Fox and Mr. Blacksnake. At last came a morning when, just after jolly, round, bright Mr. Sun had begun to climb up in the blue sky, an egg was chipped and fell in halves, and the dearest of wee downy babies stretched out his little neck and kicked his small legs for the first time. Almost at once another egg opened, and another baby was doing the same thing. One after another, or sometimes 2 or 3 at almost the same time, broke out of their shells. Mrs. Bob fairly trembled with anxiety as she watched them appear. You see, those wee chicks were able to move about almost at once. What if an enemy should happen along this day? She could keep still, but could she keep her babies still? Bob came to look at them. You okay, Jax?
Where is this book? But I know we have it.
Upstairs, I think.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. I'll tell you what. I'll sit up in a tree instead of on that fence post. I can see farther then. If I see anyone coming this way, I'll try to lead them away. Meanwhile, you stay with the babies, my dear. Don't worry any more than you must. My, aren't they wonderful, said he. Mrs. Bob agreed that they were, and she agreed to Bob White's suggestion. So he flew up in a tree to keep watch, but he couldn't help whistling his joy. No, sir, he couldn't keep from doing that. So, though he thought he was keeping their secret, he was, in a way, telling it. My dear, said Reddy Fox to Mrs. Reddy over in the old pasture, listen to Bob White. I guess the old pasture isn't very far away, is it? Such happiness can be but one thing. Their eggs have hatched. Uh-oh, Reddy Fox has figured it out. From now on, we must do some real looking. I can think of nothing better than a dinner of young Bob Whites. Hope Bob has a big family, for then some will be likely to be careless. It was a big family. 16 wee Bob White chicks. It didn't seem as if such tiny folk just out of the shell could be strong enough to run about, but they were. They left the nest with Mother that very afternoon. And that's the end of Chapter 9 of the Dear Old Briar Patch. We'll try to read another chapter tonight or tomorrow. Okay, bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, guys. I'll miss you.